So I think from us, initially, when one looked at this whole initiative and the invite, it really resonated with what we'd like to be associated with. And because we've seen how addressing some of these things can improve the lot of the continent, can improve those issues which address that we are not meant to be consistently dealing with issues of poverty. And as somebody said, poverty is not natural. It's not something that we should be tolerating. So therefore, I think from an African point of view, when we initially set out to raise our initial fund 16 years ago, I think investing in infrastructure across the continent around about the early 2000s was not a very sort of sexy thing to be looking forward to, especially if you're going to try and raise, hundreds of millions of dollars to attract that. And you were even told that there's not even enough deal flow to sort of support that type of capital for the continent. And I think we have shown in terms of our results how addressing issues of sustainable development, investing in issues which make the continent, give it a chance to be able to compete, can start then having a positive impact on the livelihoods of people in terms of starting to address, environmental issues, in terms of addressing social concerns that need to be done. But then also doing all this with capital initially raised, all from Africans in excess of $600 million then, about 2006 monies, all from African capital and institutions to say to them, until Africans start addressing their own issues and believing in themselves and investing in themselves, it's very difficult to tell somebody to take a bet on you. So therefore, taking that plans to say, we're gonna take African capital, show and take a long-term view on the continent, invest in bricks and mortar, and not come with short-term capital for the continent, is the way we need to start addressing our issues on a sustainable basis. And once you do that, we have shown that on the back of that initial equity capital, we've been able to attract a whole lot of billions of dollars in infrastructure development across the continent. The iconic Lake Turkana type projects, the largest wind power project on the continent, 320 megawatts, 400 kilometers from Nairobi. The iconic Henry Konan Bridge in Cote d'Ivoire, which is at the time added a GDP point to the economy of the country. Having those type of things which are sustainable and drive long-term improvement in the lives of people is a way of getting, I think, Africans, from our point of view, from a business point of view, to start getting out of the poverty trap. And in that manner, I think for us, when we saw some of these ideals that global citizens, aligned with, I was happy to oblige in that respect, because we've seen, for one, how unlocking capital, appropriate capital, can make a big change. Today we have energy projects across the continent which touch in excess of 30 million people, from Ghana to Nigeria, to Kenya, to South Africa. And all those, until we systematically and continuously engage, and we will never be able to start addressing those systematic barriers. But the systematic barrier that we need, and I think Global Citizen is focused on, addressing the issues of unlocking, some of this capital, which developed nations get at very low, cheap rates, 1-2% rates. And then when it then comes to the continent or to other developing economies, we get to rates in excess of 7-8% instead of with regards to the need, it then makes your inability to compete, or there is no fairness in that sort of environment. So therefore, one of the issues in drawing on the appropriation of the special drawing rights that Global Citizen is focused on, at least the $100 billion can be unlocked towards addressing, some of the properly or appropriate capital to get our game going on. And I, from a business point of view, from an entrepreneurial point of view, I thoroughly believe that until we address the issues of, equity or fairness in those capital and in those we are just beating about the bush and not going into the bush.
Yeah.
And we need to really address those issues. And once we address those issues on a sustainable basis with sustainable interventions, we will then start addressing issues of poverty, unemployment, inequality, the issues which make our most vulnerable, women and men get further down in terms of that food chain. So we really need to be, I think, much more aggressive in that regard. And the one subject of which I'm a big student of and thoroughly believe in is then one of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in holding somebody accountable for something and taking responsibility for things that you did or did not do, and say why, how, not, and whatever. And until we get leadership sorted, we will just never, in my view, address those issues. In my studies, I'm told that the history of anything can be pinpointed. My colleagues because I always tell this to them. The history of anything can be pinpointed to actions taken by somebody at some time which led to some action. Whether it's 50 years, whether it's 100 years, whether it's 10 years, I can take out any case study and say this group of people or this person took this action at this stage, and this is what it resulted in. This is what it resulted in. It's never a straight journey, but you can pen that history along that a project time. And so therefore the issue of whether we're going to be building the country or whether we're going to be building institutions or whether we're going to be building capital formations, in my book, balance sheets, which I'm very passionate about, building, but it's more in the form of those formations can enable us to do. Whatever it is, it starts with somebody doing something at some stage which led to something. So therefore, the issue of who is the whatever which caused this thing, we can only always plan it, point it to somebody. So leadership becomes very key.